All right. Good afternoon, John. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Good, good. All right. Well, I want to set the stage here. John and I have known each other from a previous life. About 4 years back, John took a temp to perm assignment working in talent acquisition for a very well known brand, Boston Whaler, where he successfully went perm and worked for many, many happy years and has still continued on his talent acquisition and HR career. So, that being said, John, I'm really excited to kind of chat with you a little bit today and let's jump into it. So, if you can give us an example of some of your industry knowledge, what experience do you have in the recruitment and industry when it comes to the manufacturing roles? And how do you keep yourself updated on industry trends and the changing workforce demands in manufacturing?
Well, I have over 5 years. I'm sorry. I have over 3 years experience in manufacturing, where I came into Boston Whaler or Brunswick Corp, which is their parent company.
Yep.
And I was recruiting for over 300 open positions that they had, where I was brought in as the only recruiter there.
Wow. Okay.
Um, the positions were high. I'm sorry. These positions were highly anticipated because they needed to get these positions filled immediately. They were almost 2 years on back order on all their boats that they were manufacturing. So everything needed to be filled almost immediately. So I had a big task on my hands to start getting these people in, get them in for the interviews, and start moving them forward into the process to
Yeah.
getting them hired.
That's interesting. And that's a pretty big feat when you think about coming into a new role with over 300 recs for a company that it's make or break. Having those people is how they get their product out. So when you're thinking about your candidate sourcing strategy, what strategies do you typically use when you're trying to source skilled labor type roles?
Well, ideally, I use the referrals. Those are my number one source of good candidates.
Yep.
As well as I was using ZipRecruiter and Indeed, specifically at Boston Whaler.
Okay.
And we had our database, which was Workday.
Okay.
But, with the amount of roles I had, I actually implemented a program or a contest where it was a referral contest where we had 2 weeks to get as many referrals from every employee from Whaler.
Yeah.
And whoever gave me the most viable candidates, they actually won money.
Oh, wow.
So in 2 weeks, I was almost able to get 300 referrals. On normal, I would maybe get 5 or 10 a week. So this was a task that we had to do and get these people in. And this seemed to be very successful.
Fantastic. I like the out of box, and creative way of thinking, especially on such a short timeline. Were there any screenings or assessments that you typically like to use to assess a candidate's technical skills or qualifications for specific roles? What were your go-tos?
The only thing I used for assessments for candidates was for my welders.
Okay.
Everybody else I could bring in entry level, but as far as the welders, they had to have specific experience with MIG and TIG welding.
Okay.
So they would be brought in and they would be with me and the hiring manager for a certain amount of time for the interview. And if we wanted to move forward, then they would go over to one of the team leads and they would give them a welding test, which would take about 40 minutes.
Okay.
And if they were able to complete that properly, then we would move forward with them.
So when it comes to hiring challenges, and I think this is something that all employers can kind of relate to, right? Just the stressors that come with hiring for a company. What did you see most commonly as being the challenges that you would encounter, and how did you overcome them?
Well, the biggest problem I had was retention. Our attrition rate was ridiculous over at Whaler, as it is in most manufacturing companies. But with Whaler, we had a lot of people coming in and saying they wanted the job. And because Whaler's factory is not air conditioned and it's all open walls and we have all the bays open, if it's 100 degrees outside, it's 100 degrees inside.
Yeah.
So we kept losing people on that sense. But
Okay.
we also had other problems with the training process. So with that, I actually stepped in and started looking at what the trainers were doing for my candidates
Yep.
because everybody was leaving within a few weeks. So I actually stepped in and started doing some new processes where I started meeting with my new hires on a bi-monthly basis and having lunch with them and having them vent and explain to me what's going on and what they needed and what they weren't learning. And we were able to find out the problems where the problem lied in the process of keeping our candidates.
Okay.
So with that being said, I was able to actually find out that it was more with the training process and with the trainers to get the problem resolved. It took a little while, but we were able to get their attrition rate back down to, I think it was like 28% before I left.
Fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about the collaboration with hiring managers, because I think that's something that talent acquisition and recruiters deal with quite often, is sometimes the struggles or, the cooperation. So what would you say is your tricks and tips to have great collaboration with your hiring managers and understanding their job requirements to best be able to fill their roles?
Well, I had actually a good rapport with almost all the hiring managers there because they knew I was there to help them. So I actually had a weekly meeting with the senior staff and the directors on a weekly basis where we went through all the roles that we had open and all the positions in real time. And then if I had some questions, the senior managers were there to answer them. If I had questions on what they were looking for, they were able to answer those questions. So it was a very open conversation I had with the managers. They knew they can come into me and talk to me anytime they wanted to, I guess, tell me what their concerns are with the people that they have or what open positions they're going to be having.
Okay.
So it was really a good process I had over there.
John, what HRS or HRIS or CRM software specific to HR and recruiting do you have experience with?
Well, I have a large amount of experience with HR, any sort of applicant tracking systems. I worked with Workday, which was predominantly at Boston Whaler, but I worked with Microsoft Dynamics, Bullhorn, ProHire, RecruitMax, PeopleSoft. I had made my own database at one point a while ago that worked well for me.
All right, fantastic. And at this stage in your career, what would you say is the most important thing to you about the next company that you work for?
I want to be with a company that helps me grow and gives me the opportunity to learn and possibly reinvent some policies and procedures if they need to be done, like what I was doing with Whaler. I like the challenges, but I also like to be able to do things that need to be fixed. I like to think outside the box. My opinion, I would like to know that it matters. And what I do is, important and that they see that.
Fantastic. John, I really appreciate you allowing me to record a portion of our conversation today. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recorder and chat with you a little bit more offline if that sounds good.
That's fine.